Hello, everybody. My name is Linh Dao Smooke, and this week on Planet Internet, I'm bringing in, of course, Amy Tom, our regular host and podcast extraordinaire, and Marcos Fabian, a new voice on the podcast. Yay! Round of
Yep.
applause.
HackerNoon podcast.
We're just gonna discuss remote work today. I thought it's a very interesting topic because for those of you who don't know, me, David, and Marcos and Richard, our other developer, are actually all in the same place in Los Angeles. Well, it doesn't look like that right now because we're recording from two different locations, but we've been hanging out, eating together, walking all over LA, playing basketball together. So I thought talking about remote work while we're physically together for the first time would be a great topic. So let's dive in. Let's start with you, Amy. What's your experience thus far in your career? How have you worked? Have you been in the office or worked remotely for the most part?
I have only ever worked in an office until HackerNoon. So yeah, my entire career has been office based. No, that's not true. Once I had one retail job for 2 months. Other than that, I have only ever gotten paid sitting at a desk. So in an office. So this is my first remote work experience.
Wow. All right. And like, how long have you been how long has your career been?
I'm going to say 6 years.
6 years? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So like for the majority of those 6 years, it's been in an office. Mm-hmm. What about you, Marcos?
So I would say more like half and half. For me, so when the whole pandemic started, I work at HackerNoon, as applications. And it was totally remote. It was kind of weird because I wasn't like expecting it. But outside of that, I did like a lot of freelancing work, which is actually like remote as well. But before that, before 2020, it was mostly in person or, going to the office or like waking up and just like sort of like driving to work or taking the subway to work, that type of stuff. So I do have some experience in the remote like environment, but, still like, going to the office is still like the most popular way of like, bringing an income to the family.
Gotcha. So I actually will put this link on the show note, but according to Planet Money, 97% of Americans still before the pandemic still working from an office. And then after the pandemic, that number has moved to like 93% or something. So even though we're like working in tech and like it seems as though everybody is remote, but like the reality is actually the opposite, by far. Most people still work from the office and the pandemic just moved that number a little bit. As for myself, I think I'm the odd one out, I guess. I've been working mostly remotely for the majority of my career. So I started out as a teacher and as a research assistant. Then I became like this representative of a university, which is based in San Francisco, but then I'm in Asia. So I had to like have meeting at like 1 a.m. So I'm like really strongly empathize with Lee Mark and, whoever that's based in Asia right now, like I know that well of just having meetings that are very American centric. And like now I'm like on the other side of like having meeting time that like works for me, but then I feel for Asia based people. But yeah, like since I guess 2014, I've been working remotely. So it's been like 7 years. And that's majority of my adult life. Have been working remote. So yeah, okay. So my next question would be, what do you think? Like how has your experience been prior to working remotely and after working remotely? How about you, Amy?
I never thought that I would be suited for remote work. I don't know if you've noticed, but I like to talk a lot. And
no,
so
never occurred.
So I really need like a lot of like social stimulation, like a lot of social stimulation. So like I never thought that working remotely would be right for me because I love going into the office and like saying hi to people and talking all day. Like I used to get reprimanded at my corporate job for being away from my desk too often because I would just be like everywhere, like talking to everyone. So I honestly feel like I'm more productive at home because there's no one to talk to. And I actually kind of like it. It's kind of nice. I'm getting like definitely getting some more introspective alone time for sure. But I do miss office life a bit in terms of like socialization. But I've actually discovered some other ways for me to like still gain that socialization. I'd say about like once a week, maybe twice a week, I go and work from someone else's house, like one of my friends, so that I can just like have a co-working session and like be around people. So yeah.
Cool. What about you, Marcos?
I feel like for me, it was more like before the whole pandemic, it was just like there was no option of remote work for me. Like I remember just like looking for a job. It was like remote work was not on my head, to be honest. It was more like, okay, I got to apply to this position. I got to go to, downtown to like the city and then, just work next to, my colleagues and all this type of stuff. But then like, because of what I do, like, working, as a software engineer, like you mostly working like in front of a computer and that's where you spend most of your time. So when remote work actually came into place in my life, I didn't actually feel like that much of an impact just because, I'm still like in front of a computer and all that stuff. But I do believe that the most impactful way was like the whole Zooming interaction or like video calls. Like that was really like impactful for me because it's not like I can just like be, asking for help or just like talking to whoever is next to you or, or having like a onboarding flow where you have somebody just showing you around the building and just presenting people to you. So that way is I'm kind of missing that because I do have like 2 positions that I did remote and it was just like they introduced me to everyone, but then it was like more like you figure things out, they give you all the resources but you figure things out. So I kind of like felt weird to even ask questions and stuff like that. So I feel like I agree with Amy, that whole interactivity and socialization. I kind of miss that. But then at the same time, when you look at the productivity side of things, it's like you at home, you wake up, you work, like you do things your way and like,
controlling your own schedule.
So it's a lot of like props, but some comes at the same times.
I agree that there's definitely like so many cons to remote work that we don't even have to like start listing them. Like we in this weird time of like the pandemic really put into perspective of what how much humans crave connection, right? Like how much that we're not like really built for being in isolation all the damn time, right? Like it's like this whole mental health crisis and like all of the violence and like the mental health stuff that have been popping up here and there. I think it's got to do with just human, like a reaction against the isolation and the feeling of loneliness, right? But I also want to not veer too much into like the dark side because I have the perspective of someone who not only have been working remotely all of my life, but also starting a company. Basically, the baseline was remote work. So like I can like see how someone, let's say, Wayfair is one example, is like my sister-in-law's company. And that is a company that's like very heavy in-person culture. It's like sticky notes and whiteboard and people like moving in and out of someone else's office and like, asking for help. Like you mentioned, Marcos, like that's like a very culture of the company is built off of in-person interaction. So like when the pandemic happened, right, like moving from that, like you can't just like overnight, switching that switch and be like, boom, done. Like now we can all work remotely and like do the same thing. You basically have to shift the culture of the company and the mindset of the people, the expectation and managing style and trust issues, like it all came out.
An entire workflow too.
Yeah, entire workflow and all of these tools. So yeah, in that same like Planet Money podcast, they mentioned like this, basically the remote work pandemic is not like a technological challenge. It's literally a culture challenge. And like it's hard for someone who has never done that to like all of a sudden do that, overnight. But however, because HackerNoon, we started out as a remote company from the get-go. We kind of like attract people who are more like independent, like self-starters, know that they can control their schedule and like that they can control their schedule, So like it started, like for us, it's just like become natural. Like I remember like the first thing, Marcos, when we met, is like, how do you just like ensure that people don't like abuse the system, because like you can't really see, how if someone is like working or not, or taking time off way too much. And I'm just like, interesting, because I mean, that's just built into the system, right? Like we cannot afford this kind of company that is 100% distributed if we don't have trust in the first place, like it's just like basically has to be reverse engineering it. And we like, okay, we have trust. We just assume that everybody will do it. Now, what we do if there's like degrees of like different productivity and people needing different hand holding, different simulations. So it was kind of interesting to me to like think of what if and like the different kind of exceptions to the rule. Like I never think that like we have to remote work, because I never have that luxury of like thinking anything otherwise, but yeah, like why do you think people like, why is trust, like why is like knowing how much is being done so important, do you guys think? Like why is the culture is like having a meeting and like accountability and like asking people what is being done? Like it's just so rampant. Like why is it so important?
I think that everything's coming from the top down, no? Like, yeah, I'm the CEO, I want the triple bottom line to be met. What are you doing to meet that? Top line manager. Oh, okay, well, what are you doing to meet that middle line manager? Okay, well, what are you doing to meet that bottom level employee? So, right. Like people, it's more, the productivity is more about like, how are we going to make money and continue making money when we can't physically see what people or how hard people are working, I guess.
I think that trust in this type of environment is essential. Without the trust, it's like I do see things falling apart. And let me say this, it's because it's so hard to sort of like having a supervisor that is on top of everything in this environment, right? I mean, we can do it, but then, the whole culture of the company will take a shift, And I just feel like the fact that trust is there, like from the get-go. Like we just assume that people will do their part, Like I have a bunch of tasks, and you guys assume that I would just go in and do my job. And for that in that aspect, you expect me to just do me. But that's why at the same time, that's why we look for people that are more like independent, like are willing to take on the challenge. And honestly, I didn't thought before working at HackerNoon that I could do such thing, just like be me and then just figure things out. And then when I did realize that, that's when I was like, wow. So I'm really more productive. I'm really like just more happy overall. I'm really like spending more time with my family. I'm really like spending less money on traveling to work and like waking up, taking a shower, like eating breakfast on the subway or whatever. Like it's just a whole change. So I do believe that, we everything happening like in the war is just a change that was like needed at the same time, but it's like you mentioned, Ling, it's like a cultural change that people just need to adjust to it, and it's a whole mindset thing because you really like not everybody's like teaching a lot. It's more like you just figuring things out, and hopefully you up for the challenge of like working remote.
Yeah, I feel like it just, like the trust has to be there, but it also like it makes business and practical sense for a company like ours to attract talent, not because they congregate all in the same spot, like we like, why is it so important that like most companies have to be based in San Francisco pre-pandemic, for example? That's because that's where most people live, and the chances of like stumbling upon talent is like higher. And then because of that, it's like a chicken and egg thing. Most people, and because most companies are based there, most people also go there. And because most people go there, like most companies are based there, it's just like a circle. But then for us, because we started outside of those kind of bubbles, so we have to look around and be like, well, what is the best way to attract people, without going to a place? Well, I guess we have to be open. We have to be transparent. We have to like, tell people that we trust them, so that hopefully that it will, it will be a magnet that like people who come to us will be kind of like that. And we are actually getting people like you guys and like, all of the teammates who are from literally all parts of the world. We have people from India, Pakistan, we have people in Vancouver, we have Florida, we have the Netherlands, Germany, like just everywhere. And I'm just like astounded and reminded every single day of like the kind of just like amazing people that we're able to meet. Had we not been remote, we wouldn't have been able to stumble upon you guys, like we would have to fly you guys. And yesterday, Marcos, you were asking me about like what you guys do about visa and like, like do people need to have access and easy access to America? Like, no, like we can meet whenever we want, which is why we're meeting right now in LA, but it's not a must that people need visa access to America, So like that reduced to me a lot of physical boundaries and like just artificial kind of border thing that like we don't need to deal with, It's like talent is borderless and so should work. So
yeah. I heard that Silicon Valley has gotten shaken up since the pandemic, and that a lot of people are moving to Austin as like a secondary Silicon Valley. So
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's natural, like people realize that within the bubble of the cities, it's just harder to do work, especially if you're like under lockdown or like if most businesses and most activities are closed. Like I think Marcos here is like case in point. He was in New York, right? And then I mean, within the pandemic, what can you do? Like, you just can't even like walk down the street or like enjoy the type of activities that usually you could. So you move away from New York.
And that you pay that premium for. That's why a lot of people moved out of San Fran, because they were like, why would I pay this much money when I can't do anything? So I'm just going to move to Texas instead.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Marcos, what do you think? Like, do you have any prediction about like, will people eventually come back to like the hubs of the world and the cities of the world, like New York, San Francisco, or like, what do you think will happen?
I do believe that it will come back just because of out of necessity, But I do believe that right now, according to the numbers, a lot of people would just rather, work from home, like, because of, a lot of people are realizing that they can actually do that. And it's been proven that, if you are just more productive in like working from your house, then why are you even going to an office? If you can do the exact amount of tasks from your house, then like, why are we paying rent on an office somewhere in, the downtown of a city? So I do believe that margin, that gap will, increase. So right now it's what, 7%? I think we just keep going and going.
Yeah.
It also depends on what type of job do we do, right? Like, because there are some other type of jobs that they do require to, be in person, like essential worker type of jobs, So for that, in that aspect, they would just keep going to, their in-person, regular jobs. But for us, if you can just do the same thing from your house and from the office, I really like, and a lot of people are coming into the realization that, a lot of companies actually of like, why are we paying like thousands of dollars in like an office and coming into place. Like my stepbrother, he's working remote, and his job wants him to like, go back to the office. So
what does he do?
He's a full stack developer as well. He's a senior full stack developer. And, he already got used to like he actually found a job in the pandemic. So while everything was going down, even myself, I lost my job in the pandemic. So he actually found a new job in the pandemic. He got to work remote and all that. And he was like, he just adjust to it. And he figured out that he's just more productive and that his life is just way better. Like, he don't have to wake up, go like take the subway, spend like 40 minutes on the subway to then go to a crowded city and then, actually get to the office. Instead, he just at home, he works, he spends more time with his family. He seems more happy overall. And now they telling him like, listen, we are about to open again. And that brings a lot of doubts in you because, if you experience both worlds, like going to the office and then you are like working from home and you are like at this point where they're actually telling you need to go back, but you feel more confident, working from home. He's already thinking about starting looking for new positions and feel like this is where it's gonna go. Like a lot of people believe that, there is no reason why you should go to the office if you can do the same amount of things in your house.
Right.
So, and I do expect a lot of people to, a lot of companies will emerge from this. Like a lot of companies already emerged from the pandemic.
So Google, for example, has implemented this new policy that workers can work indefinitely remotely or from home. So I think like other companies probably will follow suit as well. But yeah, like I think that actually a great segue into the second video that I share in the show notes as well of like, just zoom out a little bit of like why we even work, or like, this idea of like an 8-hour workday from like 9 to 5. And like this idea that like your identity is tied so much with your job and your employer and like your coworkers are also your friends, that kind of thing. Apparently it's new. Apparently for most of human lives, like our identity is not so tangled, within the work, like, and most of human lives, we don't even work 8 hours workday or even work at all some months of the year, like, because with the invention of the light bulb, apparently that is when it happens that like the 8-hour workday and people can like work past sundown and people can like work overtime because electricity and light and stuff like that allow that to happen. I mean, prior to that, people just work whenever there's the sun. And if the sun, goes away, then they don't work. And in the winter months, because it's just so cold and there's no electricity. So they also don't work. So like this whole new like identity we have of like our like everything about us is about work and it is about the 8 hour is like relatively new compared to human being. So my question for you guys would be like, what do you think? Why do you think you work? And that's what the first question. And the second question is like, what do you think about the Great Resignation? That like the massive amount of people are like just quitting their job, especially starting, when the eviction moratorium just kind of like ended in America. That's when we see so many people just like quit their job. So what is your comments / thoughts on those two questions? How about with you first, Amy?
Okay. So quick side story. I recently saw a bunch of family members that I haven't seen in like 2 years because of COVID. And I saw one of my aunts that I haven't seen in a long time. And she's like, well, Amy, what are you doing? And what do you think you're going to do in the next 10 years? You know, how like they want to know like what the lowdown is of your life. And I was or like, what do you want to do in 10 years? And I'm like, literally nothing. I don't want to do anything in 10 years. What are you talking about? I don't want to work. Like it, as if like they're gonna judge me for being like, oh, I don't want to do anything. Like, oh, they expect me to be like, oh, I'm gonna become a doctor or something. Like, no, I actually don't want to do anything. So I guess like my purpose for working is that I want to give more like diversity to the tech industry and like bring more awareness to like females in STEM, and like that's my purpose for working, I think. But like, what do I actually want to do? Nothing. I don't want to work ever. If I could stop, no offense, Ling, if I could stop working tomorrow, I would.
Okay, Amy, remind me to send you another TikTok video. It's like this person like eating watermelon in like the beach of like the Caribbeans or whatever. And she's like, you know that humans are designed to be like butt naked, eating fruits and FUCK in the wild, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what humans are designed for.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it's such a popular TikTok reel. Okay, I'm definitely gonna send it to you. All right. So that's your answer. What about you, Marcos? Why do you work?
For me, it's more like, it's a little different. For me, I just love the challenge, to be honest. I feel like if I don't work, I'll be super lazy, to be honest. And I just don't like just being there doing nothing, to be honest. Even if I had an income, even if I become a millionaire, I feel like I would still wake up, trying to, challenge my brain to, either learn something new or whatever. So, but yeah, that's me. But I just want to bring something out. It's like the amount of people, especially in America, that, are accustomed to, the life, like that lifestyle of just like, going to an
like
office.
being a slave at work or something.
Yeah, like going to an office or just going to an in-person type of job. Like that is just, flipping around, to be honest, right now. I remember like before moving to Florida, or even before I started at HackerNoon, I was having a conversation with my dad, and I told him like, yo, I got hired at this company, blah, blah, blah. They look great. I love their green, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, where is it located? Like he was expecting me. I was still living in New York City. So he was expecting me to say like, oh, in downtown Manhattan, or, near Rockefeller Center or near World Trade Center. I was like, no, I just work from home. And he was like, really? And you get paid for that? He literally was questioning me getting paid for working from home. So a lot of people still believe that, working from home is not acceptable. Like a lot of people don't even realize that or don't even recognize it as a real job, So I just believe that in that instance, all of that will change in the next couple of years, because a lot of more people just will realize that, if I could just do it from my house and just be more comfortable, like just do you, then why even trying to apply to a new position where you are just required to work more? Because, waking up at a certain time and doing like following your routine to go to work, that's work too. Like you're working just to follow that routine. So just the fact that you can create your own routine, like that's less work already, So for me, I think just to answer your first question is the fact that I love to challenge, but also, I just believe that people are not accustomed to it. And then this might be something that new generations will bring to the table. So we might see this whole like remote work growing like in the next couple of years, just because more people will choose that. And now we just like have options of like, choosing like, oh, do I want to go to the office? And I see companies struggling, to be honest, because, personnel will have to like change their mindset and change their culture, change all the, like the workflow, all of that will have to change. So I do see a lot of struggle for companies, but I do see a lot of like good things happening, like because it's good to have options. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's from the worker side, right? I think from the employer side, it's like a wake-up call for them as well. It's like they realize that people are not going to necessarily stick around just because they are required to, they have options like you mentioned now. So they can just skip the job or quit the job or don't show up to work and just don't show up to any job at all. Because like for what, people are like starting asking the questions like, I'm paying minimum wage, I'm being paid minimum wage and I'm being treated like a transaction. Like, why do I even do this? So I think companies also have to realize to not treat people like a transaction, to create a fostering environment where people can like recognize self-worth or what have you. Otherwise, we're going to have, I think the great resignation is also basically a realization that maybe we just in this treadmill like little hamsters without recognizing that we can just step out of the treadmill, of the little wheels and just be like, well, we are hamsters, we're eating cheese now. So I think companies just have to like take a page from this and like be really cognizant of what is in store for them and, either change, like you either change or you like don't survive, basically. So I really hope that more people will realize this. A revolution of some kind will come. Companies will realize that people are humans and they deserve to be, treated as such. And hopefully work will not die, at least for the foreseeable future. I mean, if we find like an alternative to work and to capitalism, I'm all ears. I haven't seen one. All the alternatives have been resulting in wars and mass murder of people in the past. So I don't think that is the answer either. But yes, if anyone who listens to the podcast find an alternative to work / capitalism, let us know.
Yeah.
Take down capitalism.
Yeah.
Until then, we probably will see you in the next podcast because it's part of our job. All right. It has been fun. This has been This Week on Planet Internet with me, Linh Dao Smooke, the CEO of HackerNoon. Until I'm not anymore, I don't know. Then Amy, our podcast host, and Marcos Fabian, our full stack software engineer. See ya.
Bye.
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 HackerNoon podcast.